the last thing, which is a dictionary. So rules of a dictionary are, they are unordered, they are unchangeable, and they do not allow duplicate values. Alright, so dictionaries are unordered, unchangeable, and do not allow duplicate values. So in dictionaries, okay, I'm going to write it with double T just so that I don't have any errors. So this is my variable. In order to declare a dictionary, you got to use the curly brackets. So in a dictionary, you will be storing data in the form of key and value. Alright, so when I say key and value, you as a human being, you have a name. Your name is key. And if your name is Raj, for example, so name is your key and Raj is your value. Age is your key, and if your age is 26, 26 is your value. Similarly, in dictionary, you can have a key, like for example, again, name, but you got to define it like this, and let's say Raj, okay, comma, then you define his age, which is the key, which is 26, for example, okay, and if he has a vehicle, we can say vehicle, and then state which vehicle he has, okay. Then you can also state date of birth, for example, as a key, and the date that he was born on as a value. So 12th, whatever, okay. So this is basically how you define or create a dictionary. Now in order to print this dictionary, simple, same steps, you write print and then you write the dictionary variable, okay, and run this. Invalid syntax. Alright, so that is because I did not add a comma over here, that it got confused. So let's run this. There we go. We have name, which is a key. The value of name is Raj. Then we have age as the key, 26 as value, vehicle as key, Ford Endeavor as a value, date of birth as key, 12/12/12 as the value. Alright. So like I said, the items in them are unordered. That means it doesn't take this as the 0th value, this as first, this as second. It doesn't work that way. So you can change the values. I'm sorry, I wrote unchangeable. They are changeable. You can change the values. The name for Raj can be changed. Alright. You can add an item also. You can remove items from the dictionary also. And at the same time, you cannot duplicate though. So when I say you cannot duplicate, you cannot have double key values. So you can't state that another key value vehicle is there, which is his bike. So let's say bike. So as you can see, it's already saying this, but if I run it also, look at that. The value of vehicle changed from Ford Endeavor to bike. Okay, as you can see over here. So the reason being, it will override the existing value. So it doesn't create a separate value. It overwrites the previous value. So earlier the value of vehicle was Ford Endeavor, which changed to bike. So that's why you got the value of bike over here. Okay. Again, in this, you can also check the length of your dictionary by doing the same length command. All you got to do is write print len with dictionary in bracket and print this, and there you have 4, which states that you have 4 key value pairs. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, like that you have 4 key value pairs. Okay. Again, in this too, the value could be of any data type. So this could be string, could be numbers, and can be booleans as well. So when I say boolean, I can also say that date of birth is true, for example. You can also mention a list in this as well. So you can also state that date of birth is a list. So like for an example, okay, so don't get too confused. I'm just trying to play around with this. So let's do one thing. I'll just change this to fruits so you don't get confused. So it could be oranges, pineapples, blueberries. Alright. So basically you can have lists as well in this. Okay. And to check the type, we again use the type function, run, and showing you that the class is dictionary. Okay. To access items in the dictionary, all you got to do is write the value in another variable. So if I say x is equal to dictionary that we stored inside this variable, and from that you want the vehicle that he uses. So I'll write vehicle. So as you can see, you already got the option. And if I print, alright, so it's not coming up because I didn't print x. My apologies. I got a little excited there. There you go. So as I printed it, it's giving me Ford and ever. So the reason it gave me Ford and ever is because I said that from this dictionary, I want x to store the value of vehicle, and the value of vehicle is Ford and ever. So when I print x, Ford and ever gets printed. Okay. So similarly, you can get the value of a model as well. So to get a value, all you got to do is this only, but instead of this, you'll write dot get, and inside get you got to write what you want. So vehicle. Okay. And now when you print this, it's giving you Ford and ever. So this will give you the same result. So in the previous one, we just directly wrote model inside square brackets, but in this you use the dot get command and try to get the value using the get key. Okay, so just trying to show you what other options are available for you. Now, next thing you want to see is how you can change the item. So if you want to change the value of vehicle to something else, all you got to do is have this as dictionary. Okay, and inside dictionary, which key do you want to change? I want to change the value for my vehicle, and I want to change this to bike. Okay, so get what I'm trying to do. Inside dictionary, the key for vehicle is currently Ford and ever, which I want should change to bike. So when I try to print my dictionary F10, there you go. Your vehicle is now bike. So that is how you change the value of a certain key. Similarly, you can also use the update method. So it will update the dictionary with whatever argument you pass through it. Again, same thing, dictionary dot update, and inside update you have to pass two things inside curly brackets. So the first thing you'll have to pass is your key, which is, let's say, name, and this name should now become, let's say, Prakash. Alright, so if I run this now, our name value has changed to Prakash. You can also add values in the dictionary. So let's say you wanted to add a certain color. So if you want to add color, and you want to say that the value of color inside the dictionary is black, and now you run it, here you have colors added at the end of the dictionary. Now let's see how you remove values from it. So you can remove in this as well as lists as well as tuples by using this pop method. So when you say pop method, all you got to do is write the variable in which your dictionary is stored, and inside that you write dot pop, which is pop. And what do you want to pop? I want to pop out the vehicle key. Okay, so when I write that I want to pop out the vehicle key, and let's remove this and run. As you can see, we had defined the dictionary with vehicle in it over here, but as soon as I use the pop vehicle, it removed this entire thing and it printed only name, age, and fruits. Got it? So that was how you remove. So this was everything in regards to lists, tuples, and dictionaries. So once again, practice this, and I'll see you in the next lecture where we're going to be talking about list comprehensions. Okay, it's a very simple thing and it won't take too long. Alright, so see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to have a look at list comprehension. So when I say list comprehension, a list comprehension offers you a smaller line of code that you can use to create a new list from an existing list. Alright, based on the values in it. So like for example, if you have a list of fruits, you have apples, bananas, cherries, oranges, whatever. And if you want to create a new list with all the fruits that have the letter A in it, you can make use of list comprehension. So firstly, let's have a look at how you would do it in a general manner. So if I have a list of fruits which consists of apples, bananas, pineapples, and let's say mango. Alright, and you want to create a new fruit list. Okay, and you want to make sure that in this list of new fruit, all the fruits which have the letter A in them will come into the new list. So what you would do is, the general way to go about this is to use the for loop. So you would say for x in fruits, if the string A is present in x, you wanted to add it into the new list. So new fruit dot append, and you'll append it using x. Alright, so for x in fruits, so for every value in fruit, if A is present in x, so if A is present in any value of the fruit, a new list will get created with the value x in it. Alright, so even pineapples have A in it. So let me just do one thing. Let's add another fruit. Let's add kiwi. Alright, and now let's work on this. Now if I run or print the new fruit list and I use Ctrl Shift F10, there you go. It printed apple, bananas and mango. So if you notice, it skipped kiwi. Similarly, if suppose you wanted the new list to have only everything that has I in it, and run this, as you can see, we only have kiwi in it. Only the fruits which have the letter I in it got printed in. Okay, so this was the general way of going about it. So you can do this entire thing which you did in 3 lines of code in one single line. So that is where list comprehension does that. So in list comprehension, what you got to do is, you got to name your list. Okay, so now we have a list called new fruit, and inside this you want x for all the values of x in fruit if the letter I is present in x. So new fruit will print x automatically for all the x values in fruits if I is present inside that x. And now if you run this, we get the result as kiwi. So if we change this to A and run this, as you can see, it's giving us apples, bananas and mango, because apples, bananas and mango has the word or the string A in it. Alright, so that is how you can use list comprehension. Similarly, you can also use an if condition to make sure that anything is acceptable or not. So for example, if we want to make sure that this list gets printed without bananas in it, so what you will do is, we will use the if condition and state that you want new fruit list to get x values for all the values of x in fruits, but only if x does not equal to bananas. And let's run this, and there we go. Except for bananas, it prints apples, kiwi and mango into your list. Alright, so that is how you can use the if condition to make sure that it only accepts certain values. Alright, now you can have the entire list into this if you don't use the if condition. Let's run this, and this entire list got added into this. Okay, similarly, forget about this list now. You can also make use of range. So if you remember, range gives you all the values from 0. So if I would say that I want a list new fruit which has x for x in the range of 0 till 10, and I run this, new fruit will now have the values of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Alright. Similarly, if you want to state that you want this in the range of 10 but only till 5, so you want it to be lesser than 6, you can use the if condition here and state that you should only print it if x is lesser than 6, and run. And there we go. We have it only until 5. Alright. Now you can also make use of the string methods. So in this, if you write x dot upper, okay, what will happen is all these values which are currently in lower cases will get stored into the new list as upper cases. There we go. Apples, bananas, kiwis and mango. All of them are in upper cases. Similarly, you can have the new list getting printed with the replacement of a certain item. So for example, if you want to replace bananas with oranges, you can have that as well. So for that, you want to use the if else condition. So what you'll do is you want it to print x if x does not equal to bananas. Alright, so we saw this before. So what it would do is it will print everything if x does not equal to bananas. Else you wanted to print oranges or orange. So every time x will become equal to bananas, it will move into the else condition, and in the else condition it will print oranges. And this will happen for all the values of x in fruits. Let's run this. There we go. We have apples, and instead of bananas we have oranges. Okay, so list comprehension is a way to compress your code into one single line rather than have multiple lines present in them. Alright, so make sure you practice this, and I'll see you in the next lecture where we're going to study about file handling. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to have a look at file handling. So it's one of the most important parts of web application, and you can do several functions in this. So there's writing, reading, appending, creating. You can do all of these things inside your file handling. But the default function in order to access a file is to use the open function, which is this. Alright, so we're going to be looking at how we can work with a file. So if your file is present in your project folder, which is Python course by default, this is how you can work with it. So if I right click, add a new text document, and let's name it trial, and let's add new file 1, new line 1 and new line 2, and save this, and let's shut it. Okay, so now we have trial.txt inside Python course. Okay, as you can see over here as well, trial.txt is available. Now inside open, all you got to do is declare two things: the location or the name of the file along with the mode in which you want to open it. So we have 4 modes that we are going to be working with, which is read, write, create and append. Okay, there are many more modes, but these are the 4 primary modes that we'll be studying. So first we'll declare a variable, let's say f, and we'll say this is equal to open and the name of our file, which is trial.txt, and once we run this, the file has been opened. So you're not seeing any results, that's because we are not printing anything, but we just opened our file. So to open a file, for reading, it is enough to just specify the name of the file along with this open. Now if you want to read the file, let's add in an R. So this is where you're stating that the mode in which you're opening the file is the read mode. So let's now print the data that is there inside it. In order to print the data that's there inside your file, along with this open trial.txt, R, which states that when readable, you gotta print f, which is the variable in which our file is stored, dot read, as it's showing up underneath, and then we'll run this. So as you can see, it's showing us new file, new line 1, new line 2. So if you want, what we can do is we can add some more lines in and save and shut. Now over here, let's rerun this, and there you have the extra lines also added in. Alright, so if your file was not saved inside this folder, which is your project folder, all you got to do over here is define the path. So you'll have to just state where your file is So it could be like D column, program files, users, desktop, and so on. So based on where your file is, you will just specify the location. Best recommendation is to just use the project folder itself to make it easier for you as well. Alright. Now in this case, it was reading the entire file and it gave us all of the text that's there inside it. Alright. But if I wanted to read only a part of the file, all you got to do is inside this read function, specify how many characters you wanted to read. When I say how many characters, if I say f.read1 and run, it's only printing n. If I say 2 and run, it's printing 2 characters. Similarly, if I say 30 characters and run, it's printing the first 30 characters. Alright, so that's how you read the whole text, but only by deciding how much of the text or how many characters you want. Alright, so if you wanted to read lines, like this is line number 1, this is line number 2, and so on, you have line 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you wanted to read only a certain line, all you got to do is read line. That's what you got to write. You got to write print f.readLine. So now that I've entered one print.readLine, it will read only one line. So F10. So if I were to copy this part and add it once more and run, you're seeing one more line adding in. If I add another line and run, the third line also gets printed. So the number of read lines you use, that many number of lines will get printed. Inside this too, you can specify the number of characters you want. So if I want the third line to have only the first 5 characters and run, there you go. It's printing new file 1, which is this command, then the second line, and only 5 characters of the third line. Alright, so that is read line. Similarly, you can also loop through the entire file by using the for loop and printing the value of x in them. It will do the same thing. It will print one line after another and complete the entire thing for you. Okay. So once you're done with your entire work, it's a good habit to close your file. So to close your file, you use f.close and run. And this way you've closed your file. Okay. Next comes how do you read and write a file. So if you want to add certain lines to the file, you will use A over here, which basically means append. So if you remember that when we used append in list, it added values to the end of your list. Similarly, A over here, which stands for append, will add lines to the end of your text document. So if I write f.write and I just state what I wanted to enter in, new line now. Alright, so our last line was ghjk. So we've added a new line now. What we'll do is we'll close this file and we'll open it again in the read mode, and now we will print f.read and run. So as you can see, you have a new line now. Alright, so this is how you can append lines. However, there is a mode called the write mode, which is when you use W over here. So when you use W over here, what will happen is everything that's there in your file. So currently all these information that's there will now be gone. So we have these details that are present inside here. Okay. But as soon as you use it as W, which is the write mode, this will overwrite everything that there is. So let's run this. Now the process has been finished. So let's open the file now in the read mode and print f.read and run this. So as you can see, we only have one single line. If you open the text document too, there's only that one single line left now. Alright. So that's how you write to a file. Similarly, you can also create new files. Now we have only one file over here, which is trial.txt inside this. So we can add new files or create new files. So when you do f is equal to f is being the variable, and you open a new file and call it, let's call it new file or new.txt, and all you got to do is use X over here. So X basically means create. So it will create a new file, new.txt. So when I run this, have a look over here. So this is currently showing trial.txt. Let me run it. And there you go. A new notepad file has been created for you. Alright. So you can use X to create a new file, or let's emphasize this so we can see the change over here. And if you write W here, which is the write mode, what you got to do is call for os.remove. So using os.remove, all you got to do is name the file that you want to remove. So we want to remove new.txt. Let's run this. There you go. New.txt is gone. Now, similarly, you can also use the if condition to do this. So that way you can also check. So if you can do this as if os.path.exists and then name what file we are talking about. We are talking about this file. So new file.txt. So if this exists, we'll use os.remove to remove this file, which is new file. And if it isn't present, then we'll use the else condition where it will print file not present. And let's run this. So currently we're seeing that there's a syntax error. Alright, so that's because I have not used colon again. And let's run this. There we go. So now the file is gone away from here. Now if I rerun this code, it's saying file not present. Alright. So that's how you delete files. So similarly, let's remove that last file as well. So os.remove and the name of our file, which is trial.txt, and run. And there we go. We have no more files left over here. And we check inside here, no files left. Alright. So that's it for file handling. In the next lecture, we're going to have a look at debugging. Alright. So I'll see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to have a look at debugging. So debugging is quite an interesting topic because using debugging, you can identify errors that occur in your program, analyze them, see where they occur, and if you have any issue with them, you can prove that the issue is an actual issue and correct it. So debugger is something that is available for you inside PyCharm, and we're basically going to be looking at debugger. Alright. So here's a simple code that I've written. In this, basically I just imported random. I created a function generate random, which basically has an upper limit that we will be defining. Then we have a main function which generates two random numbers, and the results of both the numbers are printed. And the program asks you for an input and asks you what is the multiplication of one number with the other. And if you say the right answer, it will print correct, else it will print inaccurate. And if you print nothing, it will say that the answer must be positive. Okay, so this occurs for x is equal to 10 and the range will be 10 times for the main program. But what I really want to show you is debugging. First of all, the debugging tool is up over here, which is represented by a little bug over here. When you click on this, basically the program opens the console. Alright, nothing different, and it's asking you for a code. But other than the console where it shows you your results and everything, you also get a debugger over here. Alright, so let's see how this thing works. And inside the debugger, there are a lot of things over here. This step over, step in, step out and all that. So we're going to have a look at this. We're also going to have a look at how we can pause through a program, stop a program, or move on with it. Alright, so before we get into this, let me just show you breakpoints. So a breakpoint is basically something you can add that will stop the program or stop the debugging of the program at that certain point. Alright, so there are certain loops that you know that a problem could occur. Like we have this while loop over here, or we have this if condition over here. So there could be some kind of error that could occur in your program while you make it. So in PyCharm, you've got your line number over here, and you have this little blank space in between the line number and the line that you've written. So in this blank space, whenever you click, a red dot will appear. This red dot is basically your breakpoint. Alright, to remove this breakpoint, you just click on the red dot again. And you can put multiple breakpoints as well. Alright. So let's remove these out now. So now what I'll do is I will use a breakpoint on, let's say, this while. Alright, so now when I run the debugger, what will happen is it will debug the program all the way until here. Okay, so let's hit debugger, and there you go. As you can see, it's basically running the program, and when it comes to while loop, all the values that are stored until there gets printed in. Alright, so it's showing you program is equal to true, num1 is 1, which is the random number it generated, num2 is 3, which is generated, and the result of it is 3. Alright, let me just shut this. Alright, and let me just change the point at which the debugging occurs. Let's put it in this if statement, and now let's run the debugging tool again. Alright, so over here it's asking me what is 9 into 2. So let's not write the right answer, let's write 80. Alright, and hit enter. Okay, so now we're in the debugger. So in the debugger, we've got 2 or 3 things that we got to look at. The first thing is the frames. You have 2 frames that are shown over here, and you have variables. So the variables is all the way until here. Alright, so let me just quickly remove this first of all. Alright, so over here what it does is the program runs and the program stops, or basically the program execution breaks at this point, and whatever is generated until that point, all the values of that are stored over here in your debugger. So the benefit of this is that all the variables that were created before it are shown to you, so that way you can check if the variables are right or not, and if they have certain issues you can change them and do what you need. So besides this, there's a little plus mark over here which is a new watch, and when you insert a new watch, you can basically watch a certain expression or a certain variable and see what would happen if you do something. Like for example, over here I had a program which runs and it printed a number 1 which is 9 and a number 2 which is 2, and the result of 9 into 2 is 18, but when it asked the user for an input, the user gave the answer as 80. Now in this if condition, what will happen is it will check if answer is equal to result. Alright, so you yourself too, before it even moves into the if code, can check if this is correct or not. So what you could do is write answer equals to result. Alright, and there you go. It's showing me that the variable answer which is equal to result is basically false. Alright, so that's how the program will check. So this is how you can work with a variable. Alright, so to add, you can just click on add and add a new expression, or select this and you click on this minus sign to remove the watch expression. Alright, so now the code has stopped over here, and if you wanted to continue, you have basically this button over here which is the resume program. So when you click on resume program, it basically will resume and move on. Okay, so I hit resume. Alright, so you're seeing this, the console is showing me one down arrow, which basically means that a user's input is necessary over here. So now that it showed me that the program gave me an inaccurate result, it's asking me for another number again. So I hit 18, I hit enter. Now we can go back into the debugger, and over here we can see that all the variables were checked and how it worked. Alright, so that's how you use breakpoints to debug your code. Alright, so let's run out of this now. Now the next thing I wanted to show you is step in or out. You could also have multiple breakpoints like I already told you, and suppose we have this and we run the debugging tool. So over here currently it's only showing me upper, that is an integer value of 10. So that 10 is coming from here where we've given x is equal to 10 and we've stated in the range of 10. Alright, so the upper limit gets set as 10. That's why we're only seeing one variable. But the one thing I need to show you here is this, which is step over, step into my code, step out. Currently the code is over here and we have a variable r which calls for the random function or the random module that uses rand integer, which is a random integer. So if I use step into, as you can see, it opened the random.py file, which is the random module that was called for. So it stepped into the code and opened the module. Alright, so inside the module we called for the random integer. So it's going to show us over here the random integer value and how it basically works. So that is what the step into code does. Alright, so it steps into your code and shows you what module you're calling and what function you're calling. Alright, then comes step into my code. So what step into my code does is, currently you're on this line, which is your breakpoint line, and if you hit step into my code, it just moves to the next line. Alright, so as it moves to the next line, you're seeing it selects a random integer and R gets set as 6. So the value of 6 gets shown up over here. Alright, so that's how you step into. Before looking at step over, let's again look at step into my code. So if I hit step into my code again, it's going back into the next line. Step into my code, and there we go. Alright, so it's going to the console, and over here it's asking for an input. So it's moved into this and it's asking me for an input. So let's enter a value here. Alright, so there we go. It's entered in, going back to the debugger, step into my code, program is equal to true, step into my code, and the next value gets generated. Alright, so now let's look at step over. So what step over basically does is it steps over any function that is present inside your code. So basically the simplest way to explain step over is that it doesn't step into any function calls that's there on the current line. It does not step into any function on the current line regardless of whether they're in your code or not. Alright, so now let's remove this breakpoint from here and enter it at while. Now if you're at this part, we go to console, we say 49, and now we use step over. It moves into the next line and it stays within this while loop. Alright, and then it skips and heads to the end. Alright, so that's how the step over function works. So another thing I wanted to show you, which is quite important and something that you might be interested in, is if we use this breakpoint and let's put it up over here. Alright, and now let's stop this program and let's rerun it. Okay, so it's asking me for an input. Let's enter 33, enter. Alright, so we're still in the debugger where it's got to check now if the answer is equal to your result. Over here, there's a little thing called the evaluate expression. So using evaluate expression, you can basically use a certain variable and evaluate the result before it moves into this as well. So if you click on evaluate expression and you have an expression, let's say answer, which is ANS, right? So ANS basically, if you evaluate, ANS basically has the value 33 in it. Okay, so if I were to probably try ANS plus, let's say, WER, alright, and if you were to evaluate this, so the result or the expression that would occur if ANS was added to WER would be 33 WER. Alright, so similarly, if I were to probably write integer of ANS plus 70 and I want to evaluate what would happen if I do that. So it will give me the total of what would happen if ANS, which was the answer that was given by the user, is added to 70 and what the result would be. Alright, so this is how you can use the evaluate expression tool to see how the results would show up even before you've even added them into your code. Alright, so all of these things in debugging is not something that can be explained easily, but they can only be understood better when you work with them in your codes. So I would suggest that you work with them in your codes and then try to understand them. Just watching a video will not really help you understand it completely, but understanding them really requires you to try it out. So there are a lot of other things in debugging, but the most basic things that are required for debugging are these values, which I would again recommend that you try each of them in your codes and then understand them. Alright, so that's pretty much it for debugging, and we're going to meet in the next lecture, and in the next lecture we're going to have a look at classes and objects. Alright, so I'll see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to have a look at classes and objects in Python. So as you all know, Python is an object-oriented programming language. So almost everything in Python is an object, and every object has properties and a certain thing called methods, right? So we also have classes in Python, and classes are something that constructs an object. So it's like an object constructor, and it's like the blueprint for objects. So let's see how we make class. In order to create a class, you got to use the class keyword. Okay. So after the class keyword, you give your class a name. So let's name a human class. Inside the human class, we have a value x, which has 5. Okay. So this x is basically the property, and 5 is the value of that property. Alright, and that's it. Your class is ready. Now let's see how you can print this class. In order to print this class, you got to declare an object. We got an object over here called h1, which we'll say uses the human class, and we'll print h1 dot x and run, and there you go, we have 5 showing up over here. Alright, but a simple example like this for classes and object is never going to be helpful for you in the real life world applications. So let's see what you can do over here. So in this, basically we have the init function. So when I say init function, so this init function is basically something that is executed when a class is being initialized. Alright, so all classes have this function. So if you define a class human, and inside the class human, if we define init along with name, so we're going to try and understand what this self thing is also, and age. Okay, so we're calling self dot name is equal to name, and self dot age equals to age. Okay, so we've defined our classes and we use the init function. Now let's pass the objects through it. So we'll say h1 is equal to the human function, which has the name of my human to be Sherlock and the age of my human to be 6. Okay, so if I print h1 dot name, I get my result as Sherlock. Similarly, if I print h1 dot age, I get 6. Alright, so this is how you create a class name, use the init function, and assign values for the name and age. We'll look at self as well, just wait for it. I just want to finish a certain thing before I get into self. Okay, the next thing I want to tell you is object methods. So objects also contain methods in them, and these methods are functions that belong to the object. Okay, so let's see how we can create a method. So we'll define a method as a function. So I'll just define methods, okay, which will take the value self and print hi, my name is plus self dot name. Now what you got to do is, instead of calling for h1 dot name and age, although we've already passed h1's name to be Sherlock and age to be 6, all you got to do is say h1 dot methods, which is the function, and run. And there you go. Hi, my name is Sherlock. As simple as that. Similarly, you can also declare a second one, h2, and say what it is. Call it with the human class. Give it a value, let's say Rahul, and say he's a 40-year-old man or 50-year-old man. But only thing is, over here we'll call for h2 and run. There you go. Hi, my name is Rahul. So if you call for h1 dot methods and h2 dot methods, you'll see it's calling hi, my name is Sherlock and my name is Rahul. Alright, now let's understand this self parameter. So the self parameter is a reference to the current instances of the class, and it is used to access these variables that belong to the class. Okay, so what you can do is, you don't necessarily need to have self only over here. You can use something else as well. And this is a good opportunity to show you a shortcut inside PyCharm which you could make use of. So you have self over here, here and here inside this function init. Alright. Similarly, you have self over here inside the function methods. So everything within one function can be changed together by using refactor. So if you double click on this and have it selected, right click, go to refactor, and then rename, and rename them to what you need. So let's say silly. Okay, automatically this got changed to silly, silly and silly. Same thing you can do over here. Instead of changing it twice, I can just double click here, right click, refactor, rename, silly, and that's it. Job done. Control Shift F10, and there you go. Both of them give you the same value. Similarly, you can modify objects inside this as well. So let me just remove h2 so you can understand modifying objects without any confusion. Now h1.objects currently prints hi, my name is Sherlock. So if I say h1.name equals to Rahul and h1.age equals to 40, and now I print h1.methods, run. There you go. So both of these are printing h1.methods, but the first h1.methods prints hi, my name is Sherlock, and the next h1.methods prints, hi, my name is Rahul, because the values of h1's name and age were modified over here. Similarly, you can delete an object as well. So you saw over here that this entire thing causes Rahul and 40 to get printed over here, right? So we're only going to print Sherlock and delete this entire h1 object and then try to run this. So in order to delete, we use the del keyword along with what object you want to delete, and now we'll run. And there you go. So h1.method should get printed because it's running this class and giving us the output as hi, my name is Sherlock. But then later on, once we deleted h1, there was no values to modify. So when we try to call for h1.methods once again, it says name error, h1 is not defined, and not defined because it was deleted. Alright. So that was how you delete an object as well. Last thing is that you can't have an empty class. So you can't pass this. So if you try to run this code, it's going to say that it expected a block of code to be there. So if you for some reason need an empty class, you can just use pass and run, and your job will be done. Alright, so that was classes and objects. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.
Welcome back. So in this session, we are going to continue our discussion about functions, where we will be talking about some advanced functions as well as different ways in which you can play around with functions. So up until now, we've only kind of had discussions about what are functions, parameters, arguments, and how you play around with them from a very basic point of view. But time to take the game to the next level. So the first thing we kind of start off with is lambda. So when we say lambda, lambda is also a function. All right. Lambda is also a function. But the thing is, lambda is actually a small and anonymous function. All right. So lambda is actually a small and anonymous function. So when we say that it's an anonymous function, anonymous means it has no name. When you are creating a lambda function, the syntax for lambda is lambda, which will basically take any arguments and what is the expression you would like to perform with these arguments. All right, this is the syntax for lambda. But the thing is, we've already stated that lambda actually has no name. It's anonymous. But when it comes to the definition of lambda, lambda can actually take any number of arguments. But at the same time, it can only work with one expression. All right. So when you are working with lambda, you may provide as many arguments as you like. That is not a problem. But when it comes to the number of expressions, that is limited to just one. All right. So one single expression, but any number of arguments. So how does this make any sense for us, and how does this really benefit us in any way at all? So let's see that. So basically, let's say you're defining a function. Let's call it defining a function f1, which basically takes a parameter x and does the job of returning the parameter x by adding it to 10, right? Simple program here. And let's print f1 of, let's say 5. Now I'm sending the value 5, and 5 will obviously go in place of x, get totaled, become 15. We send down. Thus, when I run this code, I will get the output as 15. Great, not a problem. However, if you've noticed, what we've done here is we've kind of created a function which has just one single statement. So the thing is, whenever you have a function like this which has only one single expression, there's no need for you to actually define a function. Rather than creating a function like this, we can actually make use of lambda. So lambda will help us when you have just one expression to work with. Here we have just one expression, x plus 10. So rather than actually creating a function, we create lambda over here. So the way you create lambda is basically you would need some kind of variable. Now, why do you need variables? Let's understand. Firstly, I'll kind of rewrite this in lambda. The same thing in lambda would be lambda, and then you have to pass the arguments, which would be the argument x. X will be the argument that is going to be sent. And what do you want to do with this x? The x will be added to 10, right? So I'll write x plus 10. That's it. Now, this is what a lambda function looks like. Lambda also takes, you can think of these as your parameters, and then performs one expression with it. So obviously, if I try to pass more expressions, I will get an error. I can pass as many arguments as I want, but this is a replacement for this. Problem is, this is just openly written like this. This is as good as you writing hello like this. It's pointless because there's no real outcome that this is going to give you. If I run the program also, you're not going to get any output of such. And I can't really give any value for this x. The whole purpose of a function is so that you provide values into the parameters and then use them, right? But then what do you do here? This is where what you have to do is, if you have a lambda function, you either put it in a variable or you put it in another function. Basically like a first class object. So what I would do is create a variable, let's say a. Now a is holding this particular statement. So when I print a, you'll notice that this actually tells you that this is a lambda function. If you want to send a value for this x, you have to use the variable which is holding this lambda. So now that a is holding this lambda function, I'll use a itself to send the value of, let's say, 5 in here, the same as the previous example. Now the value of 5 is basically going to go to a, and a will take that value of 5 and give it to lambda. Lambda will take that 5 and give it to x. Thus, the value of 5 will be sent in here, which makes it 5 plus 10. And that total value, which is 15, will be sent back down. By default, the lambda will return the values itself. So this value will be returned back in here, thus giving you the output 15. That basically is what a lambda function is. A lambda function basically takes a certain number of arguments, it can be any, but works with one expression with those arguments and returns a result for you. Similarly, let's talk about the filter and the map function. So the filter function and the map function are pretty easy. Actually, let's start with the map function. The map function, if you understand map, you'll understand filter. What the map function does is it runs a function on all items in a collection. All right. So the map function runs a function on all items in a collection. So basically, if you had a simple collection, let's say a collection of numbers like 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50, and you wanted to convert this to, let's say, float. You want to convert everything in here to a float. Now we've learned a for loop. So we would actually have to create a new collection, right? A new collection 2, which basically will be an empty list in which I'll have to run a for loop first and say for x in collection, I want to take every item of x and convert that item to what? To a float. But this float, what you're going to do? You're going to append this entire float into the second group. So what I'm doing is in this collection 2, I am appending the value of float of x. So basically append is a method which belongs to list, but basically the float of x is being appended to this collection. Thus, when I basically print out the value of collection 2, you'll see that this actually prints out floats. So the thing is, what you are doing here is you are running a function, which is a float function, on all items in this collection, correct? So rather than doing this, you have the map function. Map runs a function on all items in a collection. So the way you do it is, rather than doing this kind of looping and then appending and stuff like that, you can use map by very simply just saying that you want to map some function. What is the name of your function? We wanted to map the float function on all items of which collection? Of the COLLE collection. That's it. Now what will happen is when you print collection 2, it will tell you that it's a map object. But rather than a map object, you can actually decide what you want to convert it to. I want to convert this to a list. So it will actually give you a list of map, which will run the float function on all items of the collection. Very simply put, gives you this particular value. Let's say you wanted to take every value in this collection and double it. Then what will you do? Guess. So in order to double it, again, I will run the map function, but what function am I going to use for doubling? Now we don't know any function that will double it, but the only thing I want to do is take every value and whichever value comes multiplied by 2. This is where lambda comes into play. So lambda of x, which will take every value multiplied by 2 and store it. But on what item? On the COLLE item. Thus, when you basically print the double, you will actually get map object again, which you can then convert it to a list, thus giving you the double of every value in the collection. So that's how the map function works. Similarly, if you understood the map function, you already know the filter function. Trust me on that. The filter function does the job of also running a function on all items in a collection, but only stores the true values. So what it really does is it acts like an actual filter itself, right? Stores the true values. So whenever you shopped online, all right, let's say you found a bunch of t-shirts online and you wanted to filter it out. So what would you do normally when you shop? If you know that you want only black t-shirts, you would then select the color and you would basically filter it out saying, okay, you want to only get the black t-shirts in the collection, correct? That's what we normally do when we have to shop online. So the same thing can be done here as well. Over here too, we basically run a function that tells us whether a value is true or false. Let's say I have a default set of people and their age. All right. Let's say the random ages that I have are 14, 18, 21, 25, 26, 19, 20, 14, 13, 10, 8, 7, 34, 45. These are my age values in the collection. All right. So from these, let's say I want only the adults. Again, what you would have done, run a for loop, created a new list, added the adults in the list. But rather you have the filter function. What the filter function does is the same thing. Even when you're creating a filter, you have to basically use the filter function, inside which you have to run some kind of function. The function that you're going to run is going to take every value and return true or false. But after running that, it has to basically give you a list of only adults. So what we have to do is first define a function. We'll define a function called adult function, right? What the adult function does is it basically takes the value x, and if the value of x is greater than or equal to 18, this will do the job of actually returning true. Otherwise, it will return false. All right. Now what I'll do is I will run this adult function that I just created in here. So adults equals to filter of adult function, which will run on all the values of age. Thus, when I print adults, you will get a filter object, which obviously, just like your map object, you can convert this to a list or whatever you want to convert it to. So now you'll see that all the adults from the collection are being pulled out. But when we learned comparison operators, we already learned that when you write a comparison statement, the answer will anyway come in true or false. So what we can do is the same thing over here. Rather than actually writing an if else statement, I'll just say return x is greater than equal to 18. I'm just showing you a smarter way of working with the same code. So when I run this, once again, I get a list of adults. But we've also learned that lambda is used whenever you have one statement. What do we have here? Just one statement in a function. So do we really need the adult function? No. We'll get rid of that as well. And what we'll do is, rather than writing adult here, we'll say lambda of x, and only if x is greater than or equal to 18. That's it on all items of the age collection. And that is basically the filter function. So this was how you can run the map function and how you can actually use lambda on these functions. So I hope this kind of added value to you, and I hope you kind of understood how you can actually use lambda in filter and map as well. So that was a simple introduction on how you can work with filter function and the map function. I'll see you in the next session. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to discuss about Python PIPs. So basically, PIP is a package manager for Python packages or modules. The first question that comes to your mind is, what is a package? A package is basically something that contains all the files you need. So for example, if you were to create a folder in your computer, alright, so this is leaving Python aside, just trying to give you an example. So suppose you have a list of movies that are only action movies, right? So you'll organize them in one folder, and then inside those action movies, if there's a certain actor, you'll make folders for a certain actor and save it on that basis. So this is just an example, right? So basically you are trying to manage large number of files. So basically Python does the same thing, in which it takes the organization method to another level only. So that is where packages come in. So packages contain all the files you need for a certain module, and modules are basically a code library which you can include in your project. Alright, so basically if I were to talk to you about packages, some of the common packages which I recommend that every coder that does Python programming should learn is, first of all, the NumPy, then comes Pendulum, then comes Python imaging library, then comes MoviePy, then request, then tkinter, pyqt, pandas, pywin32, and pytest. Alright, so these are some of the Python packages which I recommend that you should all learn about. So all of these packages would be a separate course altogether if I were to go into depths of all of them, but basically try and study all of these. And in our situation, in this lecture, we're going to have a look at how you can check for the PIP if it is installed in your PC or not. The first thing you can do is either go to command prompt, or you could make use of this terminal itself. Alright, it wouldn't matter which one you use, but let's use the command prompt itself, as it's just easier to work with. So there are two things that you can do. So either you can go to the script directory of Python. So that would generally be your C column, users, your name, followed by app data, followed by local, then followed by programs, then going into Python, then going into Python, the latest one, which is 3.9. So that will be 39 in my case, and this is being made to you in December of 2020. So later on, as the packages change, the name of this would change as well. So make sure you use the latest one. Alright, then you gotta write pip -- version and enter. Alright, so we're basically seeing that the version is currently 20.2.3. Alright, so the same thing can be done over here as well. You could just write py-m pip -- version. Alright, and you get the same thing here. So let's go back into the command prompt, and you could do the same thing here. All you got to do is same thing, write py-m pip and -- version. Okay, so you have 20.2.3 that's being shown. Now this PIP is automatically included into your system when you download Python 3.9. So for all the versions above Python 3.4, PIP is present in your system. Alright, so there's no need to worry about it. And downloading a certain package, like I said, all of these packages are there. Right, we have NumPy, Pendulum, Pandas, and so on. All of these are easy to download. There's not much to do. You could again go back to that script location like this one, or you could just use py-m to make sure that you go into this, then write pip install. And once you write pip install, you gotta write the name of your package. So I could write NumPy, Pendulum, Python imaging library, or in our case, let's write camel case. And now as you can see, the installation for camel case has started. Alright, so I'm using version 20.2.3, 20.3.1 is available. So we look at how we can use this upgrade pip command as well. Now, before we do that, let's just try to use a package and see. Now we've already installed the camel case package in our case. So let's try and use the camel case package over here. So for that, all I'm going to do is, first of all, you got to import a package. So to import a package, you'll just use the import command and the package you want to install. So I've imported camel case, and I'll say x is equal to camel case dot camel case. Now we'll have a certain text, so we'll write a is equal to, and we're going to just leave all the first letters of each word small. So hi there, this is a message to check if the letters of each word are capitalized. Alright, so now let's print this with x, which is your camel case dot hump, and we want to capitalize the first letters of a. So let's run this, and there you go. So all of these had their first letters being in lower cases, but as soon as we use camel case, it made it as the uppercase. So this is how you can capitalize the first letter of each word using the camel case, and that is how you could download the camel case package. Okay, so similarly, you could also remove a certain package. So if you want to remove a certain package, all you got to do is again write py-m, then pip, uninstall, and then what you want to uninstall. So I want to uninstall camel case. Then it's asking me that it has found it and it's at this position. So do you want to remove it? Yes or no? So I'll hit Y for yes, and camel case is gone. Alright, so how do we even check what all packages you have? So if you want to check a list of all the packages you have, you would again write python py-m pip and then list. And there it's showing me a list of everything I already have in my system. Okay. Alright, so let's try to see how we can upgrade our version. So as you saw that my PIP version was not upgraded, let's see how we can get it up to the latest one. So in order to get it up to the latest one, you'll use py-m pip install the upgrade for PIP. And that's it. Your upgrading will start. And as you can see, it's saying that my version has successfully installed PIP 20.3.1. So again, we can check py-m pip version. And there we go. So it's not giving me the error that I can now upgrade to a latest version or anything. Alright, so that is how you can download packages and make use of them. Okay, so that was packages. I hope you've understood it. Make sure to upgrade your versions as well and download any packages that you need and learn more about packages and how you can create your own packages as well. Alright, so I'll see you in the next lecture where we're going to see how we can read Excel data in Python. Alright, see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to have a look at how you can read an Excel file by using Python. Alright, so the first thing you need in order to read Excel file from Python is the XLRD module. Alright, so if I try to import this now, it's available for me. Okay, so you too can check if your system consists of the XLRD module or not by using the command prompt, and you can use it like this and check. So in my case, the XLRD module is there. If it isn't there, which I can uninstall and show you. Alright, so now let's check my list. As you can see, XLRD module is not present. So if it isn't present in your system, you can use pip install XLRD. Alright, so one thing before I hit enter over here, I want to show you that if I try to rerun this code, and it'll show you that there's no module present. Alright, so now if we go back to command prompt and run this install XLRD code, there we go. XLRD has been installed. And we check our list, XLRD is present. Shut this, we'll go back here and run, and there's no issue. Alright, so before we move into how to read an Excel file, I want to show you what kind of an Excel file I've created. I've used a very simple example of an Excel file in which I've just made a total of 5 rows and 4 columns in which I have just simple data put in. There's no particular logic behind why I've used A1, A2, A3 until D3. I've just entered in values so that we have some kind of data present. Alright. Then I also have sheet number 2 in which I have another 12, 134 and 1 here. Okay. So this is just a rough sheet because I want to try and give you the example. Now, let's have a look at how you can extract a certain or a specific cell. So the first thing you got to do is import XLRD, which is the module that is required so that you can extract data from a spreadsheet. Now, in order to extract a specific cell, first of all, we'll use a variable LOC. Doesn't matter what you use, but I prefer using LOC as it makes it simple for me. Now, inside LOC, I'm going to be saving the location of my file. Now, it's a good practice to save your location in a variable so that you can just call for the variable whenever you need. Okay, I'm going to paste this here and then I'm going to write the name of my file. Now, one thing I want to show you here is this thing is going to give me an error. So let's run this and there you go. So it's giving me a syntax error saying Unicode error, Unicode escape, codec can't decode bytes in position 2, 3. So what this basically means is that /u is an escape character. So if you remember in strings or the lecture for strings, I told you to go and Google 3 topics. So out of that, the third one was escape characters. So /u is an escape character and this basically tries to create the escape code. and this is that escape code that it's trying to do. But if you want to ignore this, or you want the system to ignore this, you'll use double backward slashes. So let's quickly put in double backward slashes over here, and now let's run this. And now we have no error. Now the next step will be to open your workbook. To open your workbook, it's best to open it in another variable. So we'll use WB is equal to XLRD, which is our module, in which we're going to take the open workbook function. And this open workbook will get opened from a path. Now that path is stored into location. So we'll just use LOC over here. Alright. Now we got to open a sheet. So you have got to talk to the system and tell it which sheet you want to open. So that will be done by using the workbook, and the workbook is opened where? Inside WB. So we'll write WB dot. Now you got to state which sheet you want. So that is where the sheet by index function comes into play. So in this sheet by index, what you got to do is give the position of your sheet. So in sheets, basically we have two sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. And as you know, in Python, it takes the first position as 0, second by index position is 1. So this is the 0th sheet, this is the first sheet. Now, when you want to work with this, in WB.sheet by index, you got to state the value for your sheet. So we have 0 and 1. So we'll choose the 0th sheet. Now to print a certain cell, we'll use print, and then we'll have sheet, which is our variable in which our sheet is stored, dot cell value, which will give us the value of our cell. So our value of a cell is 0, 0. Now let's run this, and we have trial showing up. So that trial is being shown up because sheet number 1, 0 at 0 in column has trial. Similarly, if you change the values in here to, let's say, 3, 3 and run this, we have C3 text being shown up. So C3 text is being shown up at 3, 3 because over here you have C3 text. Now that is the 0th column, first column, second column, third column, and 0th row, first row, second row, and third row. That is how 3, 3 gives you C3 as the value. Alright. Now that's how you print cell values. Now how do you print the number of rows and the number of columns? So if you want to know how many rows and how many columns are present in the sheet, all you got to do is print sheet, which is the variable in which your sheet is stored, dot n. And inside that you have two options, n columns and n rows. N columns will give you the number of columns. Similarly, if you print sheet dot n rows, it will basically give you the number of rows. Now let's run this, and you have 4 and 5. Now in sheet 1 you have 4 columns and 5 rows. That is why it's showing up 4 and 5. Now for sheet 2 you have 2 rows and 2 columns. So let's do the same thing. So sheet 2 would basically be sheet 1 or index position 1. So let's run this, and you have 2, 2. That's why over here you have 2 rows and 2 columns. Alright, so that's how you extract the number of rows and the number of columns. Now let's see how you can extract all the column names. So by column names, I basically mean I want to extract the name of this column, which is trial, the name of this column, it's Q, W, and E. Similarly, we have row names. So the name for this row is trial, and the name for this row is A, then B, C, and D. Now let's see how we can do that. In order to do that, we're basically going to be using a for loop. So what I'm going to do is first select which sheet. I'm going to select the 0th sheet because it has much more data in it. And now when I write my code, I'll use a for loop with I as a variable, which will be in the range of the sheet columns. So the number of columns is the range by which it will run. Now inside that, I wanted to print the cell value. So we'll use the cell value code that we just saw. And inside this, we will run the code from the 0th value till the ith value. So it will run through each value in the number of columns, and then it will print it down for you. Now let's run this. Alright, so you know my error. Let's run this now. And there we have it, trial Q, W, and E. That's why trial Q, W, and E is showing up. Similarly, if you wanted trial A, B, C, and D, all you got to do is switch this position. So we'll say from the ith value till the 0th value. And now let's run this, and you have trial A, B, C, and D. Alright. Now if you want to extract a particular row value, so if you want to extract a row value, all you got to do is just write print sheet dot row, and then you have row values. So inside row values, if you write 1 and you run this, it's going to give you all the values that are present inside row 1. And if you go and check, it has in row 1, this is row 0, this is row 1. You have A, A1, A2, A3 with text. Similarly, you can also do the same thing for columns. So for columns, you'll write col values and then run this. And everything inside column 1 will get printed for you. Alright, so it's simple as that. That's it for reading Excel data, in which you saw how to extract a specific cell, extract the number of rows, the number of columns, extracting all column names, all row names, and at the same time a particular row and a particular column. Alright, so that's everything in terms of reading data from an Excel sheet in Python. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to talk about Python and MySQL. Alright, so we need some prerequisites for it. Firstly, the assumption is that you have a basic idea about MySQL. If you don't, you can obviously learn more about it, and you can also do a course on it if you need. Now, first thing, if you don't have any idea about it, just giving you some basic steps that are needed to be taken and all of that. So firstly, you can go to this website, which is mysql.com/downloads, and in here you have this, right? So in this downloads, you can go all the way down and download this, which is MySQL community downloads. When you go into this, you download the MySQL installer for Windows. Alright, when you click on this, you have these options here. You can download this file first. Okay, so this one is the larger one. You download this. Then you go back and you download connector Python. Okay, select your version, select your OS, alright, and install this. Okay, once you install this, you'll basically have files that look somewhat like this. Okay, so you have this over here. So running this would basically install your software for you. Alright, so I'm not going to do it now because I've already done it. And once you install it, MySQL Workbench will be available, which will look somewhat like this. Okay, inside this you'll have an option to set your password and your ID and everything. In my case, my user is root and my password has been set as well. Alright, so something like this should show up. Now the second thing to do is to go into command prompt. Okay, and you got to download some packages. So for that, let me just show you what packages they are. So inside these, you got to download this package, which is the Python MySQL connector and the MySQL connector Python. Alright, make sure you do both of them. So until now, when I was using MySQL connector, I was having errors in my code, but as soon as I used this, the errors went away. Alright, so now let's have a look at how you can work with this. Okay, so firstly, we open our PyCharm. Okay, let me just delete all of this. In PyCharm, the first step will be to import MySQL .connector. So this is the code to connect to your MySQL. Alright, so if I run this, we have no errors. So when you don't have any errors, your MySQL connector has been installed properly and now you're ready to use it. Okay, so the first thing to do is set a connection. So now Python needs to connect to MySQL. So in order to do that, you need to have a connection. So your connection is available inside MySQL.connector. So we'll create a variable called mydb, inside which we store our connection. So that will be mysql.connectors.connect. Okay, and inside connect, you got to pass certain arguments. So the first argument you'll pass is your host. So if you're using it on your local machine, it will be your local host. Alright. Now, the next thing to pass is your user. In my case, I've changed my user to root. So I'll write it as root. Don't forget the commas over here. After which you gotta enter your password for that system. So I'll enter my password now, which is QWERTY123. Alright. And now let's run this. After we print my database. Run. Alright. So if we get this, that basically means that your connector has been set and this has connected to your MySQL. Alright. Now using this, you can start querying the database using SQL statements. Okay. So we're just going to look at very simple statements. We won't be going into too much depth with this. All right. So let's have a look at it. Okay. So let me just shut all of this. Now, I currently have 3 databases here: Sakila, System, and World. Okay. So let's see how we can use Python to create a database here. Okay. So firstly, we'll be making use of a cursor. So first I will just create a variable called my cursor, which will be equal to my db, which is our connection, dot cursor. Okay. And that's it. Now, after this, you will call for my cursor and dot execute. Inside this dot execute, you will write whatever commands you want to run from MySQL. So in MySQL, if you write create database, so like this, create database, and then you name the database. So let's call it Python programming. Let's run this. All right. Now let's go back to MySQL and refresh this. And as you can see, we have a database called the Python programming database available. However, we can check if the database is available over here itself by using the show databases command. So this is a command in MySQL that lets you check for the databases that are there with you. So we'll run a for loop that will print the value x in my cursor. That will give me all the values or all the databases that are present inside it. And there we go. As you can see, it's giving us everything that's there in it, mainly these 4. All right. So this is how we can check what databases are available. Now, I want to show you how you can create a table. So inside Python programming, we don't have any tables. But if you look at Sakila, inside Sakila we have tables, and inside these we have all of these different tables. Okay. So let's see how we can enter a table in MySQL without using MySQL, but use it in Python. Okay. So to create a table, again, we're going to keep this over here only, which is going to call for your cursor, and then my cursor dot execute, and inside this we're going to run the code to create a table. So the code to create a table is create table, and then what table do you want? So that will be the name of your table. So let's create a table, customers, inside which I have the name, which is a variable character of length 255, address, which will also be a variable character of 255. All right. Once I write this and run, so it's saying that no database is selected. So that's because inside this I have to state what database I want to work in. Okay. So we're currently working on Python programming database. So over here we'll hit comma and say that our database is Python programming. All right. Now let's run the code. Okay. So the process finished. Let's go back here. Now let's refresh over here. So as you can see, we have this opening up here, and here we have customers available. All right. So that is how we've created a table. Now we don't need to check it here. We can check it over here as well. Again, in mycursor.execute, we can write show tables, another MySQL code for showing you all the tables. So again, we'll run a for loop in mycursor, which will print the values for x and run. And there you go. So it's showing us that inside Python programming or inside the Python programming database, when we run the code show tables, it prints customers. All right. So that's how you can check if there is a table as well. Similarly, the last thing I want to show you is the select statement. So the select statement basically will select data that is there from a certain table. Okay. So since we don't have any data inside customers, what I will do is I will use one of these tables. So we have this table actor. So let me show you the data that's there inside actor. All right. and let's run this. Okay, so as you can see, it's showing me this Penelope Guinness, there's Nick Wahlberg, Ed Chase, and so on. Alright, so we have data like this that's present inside the actor table, and this actor table is inside the Sakila database. Alright, so now let's try and access the Sakila database. So we'll write Sakila here, correct? Now what we need to do is run this same code, which is select star from actor. So what you're going to do is write it over here. Okay, so we're going to write select star from actor. Okay, now let me remove this, and now we'll write my result. So my result is a variable that will be storing the values of what's coming from the actor table. Okay, so we'll write my result will store my cursor dot fetch all. So fetch all basically is a method which fetches all the rows from the executed statement. Okay, so now if I run a for loop over here, it will be in my result this time, and that will again print the value of x. Now let's run this, and there you go. As you can see over here too, the entire database got printed, and you have Penelope Guinness, Nick Wahlberg, Ed Chase, and so on. Everyone's names are coming in here, and their data is coming in here. Alright, so the same thing that you saw over here is showing up over here. Alright, so this is a very simple way to understand how to use this select statement. Similarly, like fetch all, there's another code inside it which is fetch one. So fetch one basically is something that you use to fetch the data from only one row, and that will be only the first row. Okay, so let's print my result, and there you go. As you can see, it fetches only one row. Okay, as simple as that. Now this and everything that I just showed you was a very simple example, right? I haven't covered everything because MySQL in itself is a very big topic, and there's a lot of things inside it. So you have the where command, order by, delete, drop table, update, limit, join, and so on. Okay, so what I could do is show you a good idea, and what you should do is go to dev.mysql/documents. Okay, so inside this documentation, or even if you go to dev.mysql, in this, when you go into documentation, you'll reach the very same place. So inside this, what I want you to do is go down, okay, and look for connector Python. And inside connector Python, you have these over here, right? In this, you look at connector Python coding examples. Inside this, you have connection to MySQL. You have how you can create tables. You have inserting data as well as querying data. Alright, so there's a lot of stuff over here. This might be a little daunting at first, but it's quite easy. It's nothing too much actually. You can trust me when I say that. It's really simple. Alright, so the main thing to do is to actually understand MySQL before trying to use it over here. Alright, and even if you don't know, I'm pretty sure what I explained to you was a good idea for you to get started in MySQL. Alright, so that's it for this lecture. In the next lecture for Python, we're going to have a look at iterators. So I'll see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about iterators in Python. So an iterator is an object that contains a countable number of values that can be iterated on, meaning that you can transverse through the values. Alright, so technically in Python, iterator is an object which implements the iterator protocol. And this iterator protocol consists of two things. One is the iter function, which is iter, and then it also consists of the next function. Alright, so these two functions are what come into play when you call for the iterator function. Okay, so now let's try to understand what is the difference between an iterator and an iterable. Okay, iterators and iterable. So iterables are basically lists, tuples, and dictionaries. Alright, so you remember we covered these. So these are iterable objects. Okay, so these basically hold data. They're like containers. Okay, so you can get an iterator from these. To do that, we use the iter method. Alright, so let's try and understand this. So we'll make a tuple and I'll call it a tuple 1, which has car, bike, train. Alright, now I'm going to try and return an iterator from this tuple. Okay, so to return that, we'll create an iterator. Let's call it my iterator, which will be using the iter function on the tuple. Right, so when we try to print next, like I said, it calls two things, iter and next. So when we print next in tuple 1, let's run this. Sorry, I had to write my iterator in here. Let's run this. Alright, so we have car coming in. Okay, so when we try and do this and run, it's giving a stop iteration error. Alright, so let's run this. We have car, bike, train. So that's because there's no comma over here. Alright, so let's add a comma here. And now let's put that here and run. There you go. We have car, bike and train. So similarly, even strings are iterable. So when I say strings are iterable, suppose we have a string that says apples. Alright, so each object or each letter is basically going to be iterated upon. So this will print A, P, P. Let's run this. So we have A, P, P. Alright, P, L and E. Awesome. So if I had one more iteration and I run it, I get this as well, which is the stop iteration error. That means it's beyond the items in an iteration. Alright, so this is one way of doing it. Next thing, we can also have a for loop in this. So for, okay, let me just hit Ctrl Z and go back to our previous list. Alright, so in this basically I can do a for loop x in tuple 1. I wanted to print x and run, and we have car, bike and train running, right? So we can use a for loop to iterate through an iterable object as well. So you've already seen this in the for and while loop, but that's the same thing I'm trying to show you here. So let's try to create an iterator. So to create an object or class as an iterator, we'll have to implement two methods. Okay, so we'll have to implement the iter and next methods to my object. So let's try and create an iterator that returns a number starting with 1, and each sequence will increase by 1. Okay, so we'll create a class called numbers like this, and this numbers has a iter function that has the value self, and self.a is 1, that will return self. Similarly, inside that only we will define another function and this function does what? This function takes x, which will be equal to self.a, and self.a will increment the value by 1. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll take our class, a value of my class, which will store my numbers, which is this class, and then we'll use my iter, which will iterate through my class. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll print this thing. So to print that, let's put down print thrice and run, and there you go. It's printing 1, 2 and 3. If we put some more print values over here and run, it'll keep doing it. So it'll keep doing it to infinity. There will be no stopping to it. Alright, so like I already showed you, the stop iteration thing, it works only if you go beyond it. Okay, so this was everything in regards to iterations. It's quite a simple thing. There's only two things to try and understand, which is the iter function and the next function. If you understood this, it's as simple as that, and it can't get any more simpler. Alright, so that's it for iterators. In the next lecture, we're going to have a look at pickling. I'll see you there. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about pickling in Python. So when we talk about pickling, you would probably think about the pickle you eat at home, right? Because it's funny to hear pickling, but we're talking about the pickling module in Python, and kind of like the same thing, but it's got a different concept through it, right? So when you pickle food in vinegar, it like converts to something else, right? The same thing happens in Python. So in Python, you call this serialization and deserialization. Alright, so the process is used to convert any type of an object in Python, like for example a list, a tuple, a dictionary, whatever it may be, into bytes. Now when I say bytes, I mean zeros and ones. Okay, so anything that's expressed in zeros and ones are called bytes. Now why do we need this? We need this mainly in machine learning, right? So in machine learning, when you have to pass the data, you need to first flatten the data. Now this might all seem like, what is this guy even saying? But the point is, think of it this way. Very simply put, there's one-dimensional data and there's two-dimensional data. So if I were to ask you what is one-dimensional, you'll say a point, right? So a point is one-dimensional, whereas lines are two-dimensional, right? So when you have data, your data is generally in the two-dimensional format. And when you're trying to do machine learning, when you want to send it to training in machine learning, you need to convert the data to a one-dimensional format. So basically, all the data that is in the line type needs to become point type. So that is where Pickle comes into play. So Pickle lets you convert data from a 2D format to a 1D format and store it. And at the same time, get data in the 1D format and convert it for yourself. So that is what is deserialization and serialization. So the first step will be to import Pickle. Alright. So once we import Pickle, let's create a list. I'm going to create a dictionary here with key being 1 and value A, key 2 and value B. Then we'll call for pickle file, which will open a certain file called picklefile.txt. And here I'm using WB, which basically means write and B for byte. So since we're working with bytes, we're talking about write and bytes here. Okay. Now, we'll also have this, which is pickle.dump. Dump basically does what it says, like you would dump trash in a trash can. You dump your dictionary, which is this, and your pickle file, which is this, into this. Okay. As simple as that. Then we'll basically open that file, and we're trying to open that file in the read mode. Okay. Now notice I'm not putting B here, which is read in the byte mode. I don't want to read in the byte mode. I just want to keep it in the read mode, so you know that our file is converted in the byte format. Okay. I'm going to hit the next line. Here we are calling for a new dictionary, which will have the data that's stored inside pickle file. So it will load the data inside pickle file. And then we're going to print this new dictionary. Okay. So obviously when I run this, we're going to get an error because a byte like object is required is what it's saying. Correct. In our case, this is happening because if we look at this file, which is Pockle file, basically inside that folder of ours, which is over here, we look at Pockle file. Look at this. So this is the kind of data we're seeing here, and this is in the byte format. So that is why in PyCharm we cannot read this data as of now. Okay. So in order to read what this data is, this needs to be in the RB, which is the read in byte mode format. So if I run this, then you're seeing 1, A, 2 and B. Okay. It's basically converting this and showing it to you over here. Okay. So this is pickling. It's quite simple to understand like this, but you would get a better idea of it when you go into advanced Python and you understand machine learning and you understand the concepts in machine learning and how pickling is something that you will be using extensively. So pickling can be done on your own without using the pickling module as well, but you need to understand the structures. Like for example, you can use the for loop and so on and like try to bring data in and convert it, but you need to understand the structure of your data in this file. And if you don't understand the structure of your data in here, using the for loop to create it will become very difficult. Think of it as you trying to make a house. Okay. So if you're trying to build a house, you would have to try and figure out what kind of foundation you want to lay, how deep the pillars will go and so on. Right. So everything needs to be set by you. You need to understand what your final product will be. But when you use something like the pickle module, it's like going through a brochure which has a lot of bungalows as an option, and you just choose which one you want and the work will get done for you. So you just have to give the data, as in money, to make that house. So in this case, you're giving data, what you need to pickle, and it automatically pickles it down, sends it down to a byte format and saves it. That's it for pickling. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to learn how to read and write JSON in Python with the help of examples. Alright. So we learn to convert JSON to a dictionary and also to pretty print it. Okay. So JSON basically stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So even if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. It's not too complex. It's basically a syntax for storing and exchanging data. Alright. So when I say that, it is commonly used to transmit and receive data between a server and web application in JSON format. If I were to try and explain to you what a JSON format looks like, it's kind of like our dictionaries from Python itself. So this is a simple example of a JSON file. So in this, basically you have to use curly brackets and you just have a key and a value. So just like Python, you have key value pairs over here as well. But the only thing is you can also have a key within which there is another dictionary as a value pair. Okay. So inside that too, you can mention another dictionary. So like you can see, we have name, then their last name, gender, age. In the address, you have multiple keys. So inside address, you have street address, city, state and postal code and their values. So you can have this as well in JSON, and you can go into layers and layers of this if you need. Alright. So let's see how to work with this. So in order to work with this, we'll basically make a new Python file and we'll call it open JSON file. Alright. So the first thing to work with JSON is to import the JSON module. Okay. So Python's got a JSON module inside it, which you can use to work with JSON strings or file containing JSON objects. So we'll import JSON. Okay. So this way we've done the step that's necessary to import JSON module. So using this JSON module, it makes it easy to parse JSON strings and files that contain JSON objects in them. So for beginners who don't know what is parse is basically a method where one string of data gets converted into a different type of data. Alright. So let's, for example, say you received a data in like HTML. A parser would basically take HTML and transform it into a more readable data format that can be easily understood. Okay. So that is what parsing is. So basically using JSON module, you can parse JSON strings and files that contain it. So let's try one example where you can use a Python JSON to dictionary. Alright. So we have import JSON, and inside this, so we have a person whose name is Bob and who speaks English and French. Alright. So this is an example of a JSON code. So let's try and make a person dictionary. Okay. So we'll make person dictionary equals to, and this is where you use the JSON.loads. Not load, but loads. And then inside this, we'll pass person. Okay. So print the output. We'll write print person dictionary. Alright. If you run this, you get the output as name, Bob, languages, English and French. Similarly, we can also print the person dictionary and the value inside it. Like for example, if you want the language or languages, and run this, as you can see, it's giving us the value English and French. Alright. So over here, basically, person is a JSON string and person dictionary is a dictionary over here that we've created. Okay. So that's a simple example. We created a JSON string. We saved it in there. We used person dictionary to save it as a dictionary by using the JSON loads and person in it. Okay. So this was a simple example of doing that. Now let's see how we can make use of Python to load or to read a JSON file. So we have this JSON file which has these values in it. So we'll try to open it over here. So in order to do that, we'll write import JSON, obviously, after which we will open the name of our file. So the name of a file is data.json. So we'll write over here as a string data.json, and after this we'll open this as f, which will have data which will be equal to JSON dot load f. And now when we print data and run this, you get all the values that were coming in from that JSON file. Alright, so if you compare these values, they're going to be the same itself. Let's see. We have first name Rack, last name Jackson, gender man, age 24, address and so on. Alright, so that's how you can parse a JSON file into Python. So over here we basically use the open function to read the JSON file. Then the file is being parsed by using the json.load method. So this json.load method gives us a dictionary which is named data. Okay, and then when we printed data, it got printed as a dictionary. Now we can also use Python to convert to a JSON string. So a dictionary can be converted to a JSON string, and to do that you can use a json.dumps. So let's have a look at that. So let's go back to our previous dictionary over here. So we have this dictionary which says name, Bob, languages, and maybe we can also add age 12 in this. Alright, and let's put a comma here, and that's it. So we have a dictionary. We'll remove these strings so that it's a dictionary now. Name Bob, age 12, languages English and French. Okay, so let's just keep it simple so that we don't get confused. Let's just only keep it as English because we're working with dictionaries now. Alright, so like I said, we got to use the json.dumps. So for that, we'll make a JSON file. So that will be person_JSON, which will be equal to json.dumps and then the name of the dictionary. So in our case, it's person. Alright, so if you try to print person_JSON and run, you get the dictionary showing up as a JSON file. Alright, so let me just make one thing clear to you, is that all the objects in Python and their equivalent conversion to JSON can only occur if they are a dictionary, list, tuple, string, integer, float, boolean, which means true or false, as well as blank values, which is null values. So only these following types can be converted to a JSON. So this is important to remember so that you don't try another type conversion. Alright. Similarly, we can also write to a JSON file. So when I say writing to a JSON file, we can add certain values to the JSON file. So we'll use this same data itself. And now what we'll do is we'll write with open. We want to open the JSON file. So we'll open, let's make a random file now. Let's make it person.txt. So we're saving a person.txt in the write mode as a JSON file. And obviously we got to use the dump method. So we'll use json.dump, and inside this you'll have your dictionary, which is this person, as well as the JSON file that's over here. So that's JSON file. Now let's run this. And as you can see over here, we have a file person.txt, and this basically has this stored in over here. Alright. So what happens in this program is we have a file named person.txt that we have opened, and we've opened this in the W, which is the write mode. And if this file didn't exist, which it didn't, what it did is it created the file. Then we use the json.dump, which basically transforms person, which is a dictionary, to a JSON string, and this is saved in the person.txt file. So when you run the program, the person.txt file was created, and the person.txt file has these values in it, as you saw: name, age, and languages. Similarly, you can also pretty print a JSON file. So basically, in order to analyze and debug a JSON data, we need to print it in a more readable format. Like when you saw this file over here and we tried to print this, everything was very crappy around here and we couldn't really see much, right? So let's try this out again to show you what it looked like. So we used with open with the name of our file, which is data.json, as f, which gives us data equals to JSON dot load f, and when we print data we got this. Now, like I said, this is a little bit of a crappy format because you can't really understand what's happening, and in order to analyze and debug JSON data we need to print it in a more readable format. So this can be done by adding some additional parameters called indent, sort keys to JSON dump as well as JSON dumps method, both. So let's try and see how this works. This is currently giving us this output. But now, if for example, we have over here JSON dot dumps, and then we call for our JSON file, which is data with an indent, which will be equal to 4, and sort keys, which equals to true. And now if we run this, as you can see over here, it's much better than before, right? So this is because we can see it in the pretty print format. So in this, basically we have used an indent 4, which basically means we need 4 spaces for indentations. And since we use the sort key equals to true, it sorts it in the ascending order. That's why you have address first, which is A, and then inside address 2 they have sorted it out in the ascending order. Then it's C, P, S and S. So after this address A, we have age, which is from A, then F for last name, G, L, P and so on. So it's sorting it in the ascending order. Similarly, if you keep this false and run it, it will just print it the same way it is. Alright, so it won't sort it out, it'll just randomly print it like that. Alright, so I hope you understood everything in regards to JSON. It's quite fun if you actually understand JSON better, but that too is a very simple concept. You can try and study it after this. But that's it for Python, and congratulations on completing everything. You can move on to your final quizzes, after which you can get your certification. So once again, thank you for being a part of this journey. Catch you later. Bye bye.